The universe had never seen anything like it. A peaceful, grand assembly of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations sat in judgment, poised to decide whether humanity would be granted a seat among them. The Galactic Council, made up of species who had explored the stars for millennia, who had long ago transcended the chaos of their home worlds, deliberated on the fate of Earth. The moment was monumental, a moment humanity had waited for, dreamed of, and fought for. But when the verdict was announced, it was not the one anyone had hoped for. Earth is unworthy, came the voice of the Council's chairperson, an alien whose body shimmered like liquid metal, casting long shadows over the assembly room. Primitive, unstable, and far too isolated from galactic cooperation. Earth does not belong in the Galactic Union. Your request is denied. For the human representatives in the chamber, the world seemed to tilt. The rejection wasn't just a disappointment, it was a blow to the very essence of humanity's existence in the universe. It wasn't just an isolated decision, it was a statement. Humanity was too young, too volatile, and, worst of all, too unpredictable. The galaxy, in its infinite wisdom, had decided that Earth's potential was not worth the risk. For years, humans had fought to prove they were more than the petty squabbles of their governments, more than the wars, the pollution, the hatred. They had fought to show that their planet, their species, could rise to greatness. And now, after years of negotiation, alliances, and preparations, it seemed like that dream would slip away into the void. But as the shock of the rejection settled, something even more shocking occurred. A message, broadcast across the galaxy and Earth's atmosphere simultaneously, echoed through every communication channel on the planet. No one knew where it had come from, nor who had sent it. It wasn't from any government or military. It wasn't even a plea for help. It was a warning. The words, simple yet chilling, appeared across every screen on Earth. Run. It was brief. A command, not a plea. Earth had received its rejection, but what lay behind that message was far more terrifying. The Galactic Council, in its wisdom, had not only deemed humanity unworthy, they had known something no one else did. Something more dangerous than any human could imagine. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. People all around the world paused, caught between disbelief and terror. What did it mean? Who had sent this warning, and why? What was coming for Earth, and why was it so urgent? Across the globe, governments scrambled to respond. Leaders convened emergency meetings, calling upon their military and intelligence agencies to investigate the mysterious transmission. What they would soon discover would change the course of history forever. The truth was out there, but would humanity be able to uncover it in time? Or was Earth doomed to face its greatest fear alone? One thing was certain, humanity had just been thrust into the fight of its life, and the outcome was anything but clear. As the days passed, more and more questions arose. The warning, its cryptic message, the silent threat that hovered just out of reach, all left humanity hanging on the edge of uncertainty. Earth had been rejected, but the true reason behind that rejection, and the fate that awaited them, was still hidden. And as the first faint whispers of the galactic storm began to stir, the countdown to humanity's greatest challenge had already begun. Days turned into weeks after the cryptic warning had shaken humanity. The shock of the rejection by the Galactic Council was still fresh, but the warning, the single word, run, haunted everyone. What had Earth been rejected for? Why was the Council so certain that humans weren't ready? And what was the threat that had been foreshadowed by the chilling transmission? Around the world, leaders scrambled to understand what was happening. Satellites were repositioned to scan the skies, military forces were placed on high alert, and intelligence agencies worked day and night to decipher any clue they could find. But despite their best efforts, nothing came up. It was as if the message had been a warning of a coming storm, an invisible, unknowable storm that no one had seen before. As the days passed, the panic slowly started to creep in. It wasn't just the governments or military that were affected. Ordinary citizens were starting to feel the weight of the unknown. Rumors began to spread, talk of other galactic species watching Earth with growing concern, of secret alliances and forces at play beyond human understanding. People who had never once believed in the idea of alien life were now terrified that Earth might be on the brink of something much worse than they could ever fathom. In the quiet corners of the world, groups of scientists and thinkers who had long speculated about extraterrestrial life began to organize. They formed an underground network, studying everything they could, old transmissions, historical records, ancient texts, anything that might hint at the true reason why the Council had refused humanity. They scoured the past for clues, but nothing seemed to connect to the present danger. Then, the first strange occurrence happened. In the middle of a quiet, uneventful day, an explosion of light rippled across the atmosphere. It was visible from every corner of Earth. The sky blazed with a burst of color, an unnatural phenomenon that appeared to stretch across the entire planet. The energy readings spiked off the charts, and yet, no one knew what had caused it. The explosion wasn't a weapon, at least not by any human standards. No bombs, no missiles, no explosions from the ground or from the sky. This event, whatever it was, seemed to come from the depths of space itself. Scientists from every nation began scrambling for answers, but all they could tell was that the event came from a distant region of space. It didn't match any known cosmic event, not a comet, not a meteor, not a solar flare. It was something different. Something unprecedented. The message came soon after. It wasn't another run. This time, it was a location. A set of coordinates, positioned far beyond the known reaches of Earth's satellites. The coordinates weren't just random, they were pointed directly to a previously unexplored section of space, one that had been ignored by astronomers and galactic travelers alike. Earth had been warned. Something was coming. And whatever it was coming from this uncharted location. Humanity had a choice. They could ignore the coordinates, continue living in the blissful ignorance of their rejection, or they could investigate. The decision wasn't an easy one. The leaders of the world had been wary of making any bold moves, for fear that they were misunderstanding the threat. But as the weeks passed and more unusual phenomena appeared, glowing energy fields in space, mysterious craft appearing and disappearing from sensors, the decision to act seemed inevitable. A multinational fleet was assembled, made up of the best military minds, scientists, and experts from every corner of the Earth. They would embark on a mission to uncover the truth of the coordinates, to find out who had sent the warning, and why Earth was being kept in the dark. But they weren't alone. Unknown to the people of Earth, the Galactic Council had been monitoring the planet's every move. Their decision to reject humanity was not just based on Earth's readiness to join the greater galactic family, it was also a calculated move. For eons, the Council had been watching the rise of different civilizations, observing their behaviors, and analyzing their potential. Some, like the peaceful Yurlani, joined the Union peacefully. Others, like the Vragnii, were expelled for their violent tendencies. But Earth had always intrigued them. Humanity's unpredictability, its ability to rise from chaos, and the incredible potential it held, these were qualities the Galactic Council feared. But the true threat came from something far more sinister, something that could tear humanity apart before it ever had a chance to prove itself. At the farthest reaches of space, hidden in the shadows of a distant star system, lay an ancient enemy. A race of creatures known only as the Clixion. The Clixion had once been members of the Galactic Union, but they had been exiled eons ago for their violent and destructive nature. In the centuries since, they had disappeared from galactic records, their presence forgotten by most. But they had never truly left. They had been watching Earth, and they had a plan. A plan that would bring humanity to its knees before the Galactic Council ever had the chance to reconsider their decision. As the human fleet began its journey toward the coordinates, they remained unaware of the threat waiting for them in the vast darkness of space. The stakes were higher than they knew. The true test of humanity's strength was not in how they would handle rejection, it was in how they would survive the coming storm. The first phase of the mission was underway. Earth was preparing for the unknown. But nothing could prepare them for what was about to unfold. The human fleet had launched, and it was racing through space toward the unknown coordinates. At the helm of this unprecedented mission was a seasoned commander, one of the few who had the nerve to lead Earth's most critical endeavor. His name, though unimportant in the larger scheme of things, was known to his crew simply as the Commander. He was a man who had seen more battles than he could count, but nothing had ever prepared him for what lay ahead. The journey was long. Days turned into weeks as the fleet moved past the orbit of Jupiter, through the asteroid belt, and into the uncharted regions of space. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the silence became. Space was vast, endless, and empty. For humans accustomed to the noise and bustle of Earth, the quiet was unnerving. But it wasn't just the silence that left everyone on edge, it was the inexplicable phenomena that began to intensify the closer they got to the coordinates. First, the strange lights. Then, the eerie signals, broadcast on frequencies they couldn't trace. Crew members began reporting strange visions, disturbing dreams during their sleep cycles. The commander kept a calm exterior, but even he was starting to feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. One evening, a young lieutenant, new to the crew, bright-eyed and filled with the enthusiasm of youth, entered the bridge, looking shaken. "Sir," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "we're picking up something. A massive ship. It's coming from the coordinates, but it's not like anything we've seen before." The commander's heart skipped a beat. He had expected to encounter strange technologies or even alien life, but he hadn't expected to be caught off guard by something this sudden. He stood up and walked over to the lieutenant, his mind racing. "Show me," he ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the image of a ship so massive that it made even the most sophisticated human designs look insignificant. It was unlike any vessel Earth had ever encountered, too symmetrical, too perfect. Its surface shimmered with a strange iridescence that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. And as it grew larger on their screens, a chill ran through the commander's spine. "It's the Cliction ship," he whispered under his breath, though he had no real evidence of this. His instincts told him that whatever was coming, it was not going to be friendly. The Cliction had been erased from galactic records for a reason. "What do we do, sir?" the lieutenant asked, her eyes wide. The commander turned to the rest of the crew, who had gathered to witness the sight. The tension was palpable. "We proceed with caution," he said, though his voice lacked the certainty it had earlier. "Maintain our current trajectory. We need to gather as much intel as we can." They approached the alien ship with bated breath. As they neared it, a strange pulse of energy shot out from the vessel, an electromagnetic pulse that hit their systems and caused their ship to shake violently. Warning lights flashed all around them. "Damage report," the commander shouted. "Shields are down by 40%, the communications officer called out, sweat beading on his brow. "Systems are failing across the board." For the first time since they'd launched, the commander's calm demeanor faltered. "Get us out of here," he barked, his eyes narrowing with resolve. But just as he gave the order, the ship's systems stabilized. They were locked into place. No matter how much the crew scrambled, they couldn't escape. The strange ship had them in its grasp. On the screens, the alien vessel began to pulse with a deep, resonating hum. And then, in an instant, the image of the ship on the screens was replaced by a haunting, distorted face, a figure that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence, half visible and half transparent. The crew gasped, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. "This is your final warning," a voice echoed through the ship's comms, each word vibrating with otherworldly power. "You were not meant to survive. You were not meant to exist." The commander's breath hitched. He didn't need to ask who this was. He knew. The Cliction. We have been watching you, the voice continued, chillingly calm. For centuries, we have studied your kind, and now it is time for you to face the consequences. You have no place in this galaxy. Your existence threatens everything. The crew was frozen in shock, each person unsure of what to do or how to respond. The reality of their situation was setting in, Earth was in danger, and humanity's survival was at risk. The commander tried to keep his composure, but the words that followed shook him to his core. This is your reckoning, the voice said. You were warned. Run, if you can. And then the transmission ended. For a long moment, there was nothing but the hum of the ship's systems and the nervous breathing of the crew. The commander stood still, his mind working furiously to process what had just happened. The Clixion didn't just want humanity to fail, they wanted them gone. Completely. They would stop at nothing to ensure that Earth never had a chance to rise up and join the stars. The commander's stomach churned with the realization of just how dire the situation was. But amid the terror, one thing was certain, Earth's fate was no longer just about survival, it was about defying an ancient enemy. They could not run. Humanity could not allow itself to be extinguished without a fight. We're not backing down, the commander said, his voice low but filled with unshakable resolve. We are going to survive. We're going to prove that humanity belongs here, no matter what. The rest of the crew, once shaken, found new strength in his words. They were ready to fight. The hum of the ship's emergency lights echoed in the background, creating an eerie atmosphere. The crew of the human fleet, now faced with the unimaginable, an enemy so powerful and ancient that they had been erased from galactic history, was preparing to make their final stand. There was no going back now. The Clixion threat was real, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The commander paced the bridge, deep in thought. His mind was racing with strategies, but none of them felt like enough to defeat the unimaginable force they were up against. He needed time. Time to plan. Time to learn. And most of all, time to gather the courage to face the brutal reality of their situation. I'll not let them take us, the commander muttered, staring at the view outside the bridge. The stars were still the same, but the future seemed anything but certain. Behind him, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage from the previous electromagnetic pulse. There were no signs of the Clixion ship's presence anymore, but the eerie feeling lingered. The message had been clear, they were being hunted. Commander, we need to make a move, the lieutenant from earlier said, her voice breaking the silence. We can't stay in one place. The Clixion will find us, and we'll be sitting ducks. He turned to her, his face grim. I know. But running without a plan is suicide. We need to learn more about their weaknesses before we engage them. For a brief moment, there was a quiet between them, a mutual understanding of the stakes. They had no choice. Earth was at risk, and humanity's legacy was on the line. Every second counted. Shall I contact Earth Command? The communications officer asked, his hands hovering over the console. They need to know what's happened. No, the commander replied. We don't have the luxury of waiting for Earth to respond. We're on our own now. As the fleet drifted further into uncharted space, the commander and his team began to delve into the alien ship's technology, trying to decode the strange readings they had gathered from the transmission. The ship's pulse, the eerie face of the Clixion, the threats, they all seemed too alien, too far beyond their comprehension. But the commander refused to give up. The key to their power is in their energy source, the lead engineer, a quiet but brilliant woman, said one morning. If we can disrupt it, we may have a chance to force them into retreat. But that was easier said than done. The Clixion ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a weapon. Every inch of it seemed to radiate a power beyond anything humans had encountered. Trying to defeat it would require not just technology, but ingenuity, creativity, and most importantly, unity. The tension on board grew as they came closer to the Clixian ship's last known coordinates. The commander knew they were running out of time. Every new day felt like a countdown, but he kept his focus. Earth depended on them. Humanity depended on them. The crew continued their preparations, reviewing every strategy, every piece of information they had gathered. Then, at the moment when they least expected it, an opportunity presented itself. "Commander," the lieutenant shouted, a look of urgency on her face. "We're picking up another transmission, this one's different. It's not from the Clixian." The commander rushed over to the communications console, his mind reeling. Could it be Earth? Could help be on the way? But as the transmission played, it quickly became apparent that this wasn't Earth. The voice on the other end was calm, collected, but with a hint of something dark, something far more ominous. "You have been warned," the voice said in a language they couldn't fully understand, but the meaning was clear enough. "The Clixian are not your only threat. You are playing with forces you cannot comprehend. You are not ready for what awaits." The transmission ended abruptly, and the crew was left in stunned silence. The voice had been clear. Whoever had sent the message wasn't trying to help, they were warning them away. But who were they? And why would they warn humanity against the Clixian if they weren't directly involved? "Who the hell was that?" the commander muttered, his voice low, filled with unease. "Sir, there's something else," the communications officer spoke again, his face ashen. "There's a repeating signal, hidden in the transmission. It's a distress call, but it's buried underneath layers of code. We think it's from a ship. A human ship." The revelation sent a shockwave through the crew. There were no other human ships out here. Earth Command had no idea where they were. They were completely alone. Yet here, in the depths of space, was a hidden distress signal. "Set a course," the commander ordered immediately. "We're going to investigate. No matter what, we can't leave this unanswered." As the ship turned toward the unknown source of the distress signal, the atmosphere aboard was thick with uncertainty. They were no longer just facing the Clixian threat, they were about to uncover another piece of the puzzle that could change everything. Could it be another human fleet stranded? Or something else entirely? Either way, the commander knew one thing for sure, the stakes were even higher now. The tension aboard the ship was palpable. Every crew member was on edge, knowing that they were inching closer to the source of the distress signal. It was clear to the commander that time was no longer their ally, and the uncertainty of what awaited them filled the air like a thick fog. As the ship glided through the vastness of space, the crew worked in silence, each member absorbed in their tasks. The engineers were trying to stabilize the ship's systems in preparation for whatever lay ahead. The communications officer was decoding the hidden message from the distress signal. The tactical officer stared intently at the star maps, tracing out possible routes, anticipating the dangers they could encounter. Then came the announcement. The voice on the intercom was calm, but it carried an undercurrent of urgency. "Commander, we've reached the coordinates of the distress signal," the lieutenant reported. "We've detected an uncharted vessel. It appears to be human-made, but it's unlike anything we've seen." The commander's heart raced. A human-made vessel in the depths of uncharted space? It didn't make sense. Could it be a forgotten fleet from Earth? Or something worse, a trap set by the Clixian? "Prepare for boarding," the commander ordered, though he didn't fully understand what they were about to face. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The crew suited up in their spacesuits, gathering in the airlock, a heavy silence hanging over them. Each face showed signs of exhaustion, but their determination was unshakable. The fate of humanity rested in their hands, and the prospect of encountering another human ship, especially one in distress, gave them hope, however faint. The airlock opened, and they drifted out into the darkness, the eerie glow of distant stars the only light. The distress signal led them to an ancient vessel, its hull scarred by battle and wear, floating silently among the stars. The ship was a relic, one that should not have existed in this part of the galaxy. It was almost as if it had been abandoned, forgotten by time itself. "Stay alert," the commander muttered, leading the way to the airlock of the abandoned ship. "We don't know what we're walking into." The moment they entered the vessel, a sense of desolation overwhelmed them. The walls were covered in dust, and the air was stale, almost suffocating. It was a ship that had seen better days, one that had clearly been out of commission for far too long. Yet, there was something oddly comforting about it, the familiar hum of a ship's core, the warmth of human-made machinery, even if it felt distant and hollow. "Anyone here?" the commander called out, his voice echoing down the empty hallways. There was no answer. They moved cautiously through the ship, carefully scanning every room, looking for any sign of life. Finally, they came to a central control room, its displays flickering weakly in the dim light. Then they saw him. A man, slumped in a chair, his uniform faded and torn. His eyes were wide open, though he appeared to be in a deep state of unconsciousness, his face pale and drawn. The medical officer stepped forward to check on him. "He's alive, but barely," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It looks like he's been in here for weeks, maybe months." The commander crouched beside the man, his mind racing. This wasn't just a forgotten ship, it was a graveyard of lost souls. Someone had been stranded here, left behind by the rest of the universe. But who was he? How did he end up here? "Get him to the med bay," the commander ordered, his voice heavy with determination. "We need answers." The crew carried the man back to their ship, and the medical officer began working immediately, trying to revive him. As they waited, the tension only grew. Was this person just a survivor of a lost mission, or did he hold the key to understanding what had been happening all along? Hours later, the man awoke, his eyes flickering open. He looked around, confused, before his gaze fell on the commander. Where am I?" he muttered, his voice weak and hoarse. "You're safe," the commander replied, his voice calm but firm. "We picked up a distress signal. You've been stranded. Do you know who sent it?" The man blinked slowly, struggling to comprehend. "The signal," he murmured, "it was a warning. From someone who's seen what's out there. Someone who knows the Cliction." The room grew silent as the weight of his words sank in. They weren't alone. Someone else, someone who had survived the Cliction, was out there. And they had been trying to warn humanity about the coming storm. "The Cliction, they're more than just a race," the man continued, his voice gaining strength. "They're part of something bigger. Something older. And if they've come for you, it's because they're about to unleash something on Earth that you can't stop." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The man's words were cryptic, yet they carried an undeniable truth. There was more at play here than they could have ever imagined. The Cliction weren't just an invading force, they were harbingers of something far more dangerous. "Who are you?" the commander asked, his voice steady despite the growing dread inside him. The man took a deep breath, his eyes darkening. "I'm the last survivor of the Earth fleet. And if you don't listen to me, humanity is doomed." The tension in the room was almost unbearable. They had found an ally, but was he really telling the truth? And if so, could they trust him to lead them to victory against a threat unlike any they had ever known? But one thing was certain. The battle for Earth was just beginning. And no matter the cost, they couldn't afford to lose. The room was thick with anticipation as the crew tried to absorb the weight of the lone survivor's revelation. The commander, standing at the center, felt his mind race, struggling to make sense of it all. The man, barely able to sit upright, had told them one undeniable truth: Earth was facing a threat far greater than any they had anticipated. The Cliction were not just an invading race, but part of a much larger, ancient force. As the medical officer worked to stabilize him, the commander motioned for the rest of the crew to gather around. They needed answers, and they needed them fast. "We need everything you know," the commander said, his voice authoritative but measured. "The Cliction, what are they really after?" The man swallowed hard, his pale face lined with exhaustion. "I don't know all the details, but I know what I saw. The Cliction aren't just here to conquer. They've been sent to Earth because of something that's been buried for centuries, a secret that humans don't even know about yet." The silence in the room deepened as the crew exchanged nervous glances. The unknown had just turned even darker. "Tell us everything," the tactical officer urged, his eyes narrowed in focus. "What secret?" The man's eyes flickered to the ceiling as if searching for the words. He inhaled sharply, his breath rattling. "It's not just the Cliction. They've been scouting Earth for years. It's the energy beneath your planet. Something powerful enough to make even the Cliction tremble." The commander raised an eyebrow. "Energy beneath Earth? You're talking about something natural?" "No," the man replied with a bitter laugh. "Something engineered. Built long before the Cliction even existed. A weapon, of sorts. A dormant force, sealed away, hidden from all of humanity's eyes." "Who built it?" the commander asked, his voice growing sharp. "And why? And why now?" "I don't know who, but I know the Cliction have been hunting for it. That's what their war was really about, the war with Earth that never really made sense. It wasn't about conquering. It was about controlling the weapon, the force that lies dormant beneath your planet." The room was now filled with a chilling realization. A force capable of terrifying destruction, and they had been blind to it, completely unaware of its existence, its power, its purpose. The very weapon that could decide the fate of humanity had been buried beneath their feet for centuries. But why? Why didn't Earth know about this? The medical officer asked, her voice trembling. If it was so dangerous, why was it hidden? The man stared at her, his eyes hollow. Because humanity wasn't supposed to know. You weren't ready. But now we are. The tactical officer's voice was filled with disbelief. You expect us to just understand this, to fight it? Understand? No. The man's voice cracked. But fight it? Yes. You have to. He paused, as if weighing the gravity of what he was about to say. The weapon that the Cliction are hunting, it's not just destructive. It's something far worse. The moment they find it, they'll unleash it, not just on Earth, but on the entire galaxy. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling in like a heavy fog. The implications were too vast, too far-reaching to fully grasp in one moment. A weapon powerful enough to shake the entire galaxy. The Cliction had been searching for it, and now, their mission had become all too clear. They were after Earth's ultimate weapon. The commander clenched his fists, his mind racing. This was no longer just a war for survival. Earth wasn't just fighting for its own future, it was fighting for the future of the entire galaxy. And the Cliction were not alone in their pursuit. I don't care who built it or why it was hidden, the commander said, his voice low but filled with resolve. We can't let them find it. We can't let them use it. The crew nodded in unison, their determination hardening in the face of the unimaginable task ahead. They had been thrust into a war they didn't understand, against an enemy they didn't fully comprehend. But one thing was clear, if the Cliction found the weapon, it would mean the end of everything they had fought for. Not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. We need to find it first, the medical officer said, her voice steady. We need to find this weapon before the Cliction do. But the lone survivor's expression grew dark. It's not that simple. Even if you find it, even if you manage to stop the Cliction from taking it, you can't stop what's already been set in motion. There are forces beyond your control. Things that no one, can fight. If you release the weapon, there's no telling what it might do. The commander's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? What will it do? The man leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. It will destroy the galaxy. It will tear the fabric of space itself apart. And it will be your fault. The words hit like a hammer, echoing in the silence that followed. A sense of hopelessness threatened to overwhelm the crew, but the commander refused to give in. They had a mission now. They had to find the weapon first and make sure the Cliction couldn't use it. But they also had to understand what they were truly dealing with. Get us to the coordinates, the commander ordered, his voice hard with determination. We have no choice but to keep moving forward. We have to find out what's really happening, and we need to do it before the Cliction do. The crew sprang into action, each member focused on their task. There was no time to waste. The Cliction were already hunting for the weapon, and humanity was fighting not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. The team's journey had taken them deeper into the unknown than they ever could have imagined. The dread of facing the Cliction, the looming threat of the weapon, and the revelation of a force far beyond their comprehension weighed heavily on every mind aboard the command ship. But there was no turning back now. The fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy, rested in their hands. The commander, exhausted and grim, stood at the helm, staring out into the endless void of space. His thoughts were as turbulent as the cosmos he navigated. What they had uncovered wasn't just a weapon, it was the very balance of life itself. Humanity had no idea what was truly buried beneath their feet, and they were about to face a choice that would either save or destroy them. They had arrived at the coordinates, a desolate, rocky planet at the edge of known space. It was here, the lone survivor had said, that they would find the weapon. Here, they had to make a decision that would change everything. Commander, the tactical officer said, his voice breaking the silence. We're at the coordinates. This is it. We need to decide, do we go in? The commander exhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. We don't have a choice, he said quietly. If the Cliction get to it first. His voice trailed off. No one needed to hear the rest. The stakes had never been higher. They descended to the planet's surface in a small, well-armored shuttle. The planet was harsh, barren, with no signs of life or civilization. Just the echoes of the forgotten past. The crew disembarked, each member outfitted in combat gear, their faces set with grim resolve. They moved cautiously through the rocky landscape, the air thick with the sense of impending danger. As they neared the site, a deep tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. A low hum resonated through the air, a pulse of energy that vibrated deep within their bones. The ground in front of them cracked open, revealing a massive structure buried beneath the surface. The weapon, hidden away for centuries, had been waiting. This is it, the medical officer whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. We found it. The structure was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, a sprawling complex of dark, metallic surfaces that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. A sense of foreboding filled the air as they stepped forward, and the hum grew louder. It was as though the weapon was waking, responding to their presence. As they entered the structure, the walls seemed to close in around them, and the air grew heavier. The commander led the way, his mind focused on one singular goal, preventing the Cliction from getting their hands on whatever lay within. But deep down, there was a nagging feeling, a growing sense of dread. What if they couldn't stop it? What if this was too much for humanity to handle? The hum intensified as they descended deeper into the heart of the complex. The walls shimmered with strange symbols, alien and incomprehensible. They were close now. The weapon, the force capable of shaking the galaxy to its core, was within their grasp. Then, as they rounded a corner, they saw it. A massive chamber lay ahead, its floor cracked and uneven. In the center of the room stood an enormous, crystalline structure, its surface flickering with an energy that defied all understanding. The weapon was not a machine or a device, it was a living force, an energy field unlike anything they had ever encountered. The commander approached cautiously, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "This is it," he said, voice thick with awe. "This is the source." The team stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the pulsating core. The very air around it shimmered, and the hum was deafening. It felt as though the weapon was calling to them, drawing them in. "We have to destroy it," the commander said, his voice firm but laced with uncertainty. "Before the Clixion or anyone else can use it." But as the crew gathered their courage, something unexpected happened. The weapon seemed to respond, not with destruction, but with understanding. The shimmering energy at its core began to settle, forming into a series of floating symbols, alien and ancient, but somehow familiar. It was as if the weapon was trying to communicate. And then, in the midst of the chaos, the voice of the lone survivor echoed in the commander's mind. "You don't understand. It's not just a weapon. It's a choice." The word struck like a thunderclap. The weapon was not just a force of destruction, it was a force of choice. It could shape the future, but it could also destroy everything if wielded by the wrong hands. The decision was no longer about stopping the Clixion. It was about humanity itself. Could they control this power? Could they wield it for good, or would they destroy themselves in the process? The commander turned to his crew, their faces lit by the eerie glow of the weapon. "We have a choice to make," he said quietly, his voice heavy with the weight of it all. "We can destroy this thing, wipe it from existence, or, we can take it and try to understand it. Use its power to protect ourselves, and the galaxy." The crew stood in stunned silence, the magnitude of the choice hanging in the air. The tension was palpable. The Clixion were closing in. Time was running out. One by one, the crew looked to each other, then back at the commander. They had come this far, had fought and struggled against impossible odds. But now, the decision was theirs. Would they destroy the power, or would they dare to use it? Finally, the medical officer spoke, her voice steady. "We can't destroy it. We don't know enough. But we can't let the Clixion take it either. We have to protect it." The commander nodded slowly, his eyes filled with determination. "Then we protect it. We take it back to Earth, and we make sure no one else can use it." But even as he spoke, he knew the choice had already been made. The weapon would not be destroyed. Humanity would rise to the challenge, for better or worse. There would be no going back. As the crew secured the weapon and prepared to leave the planet's surface, the commander looked up at the stars, the vastness of space stretching out before him. The choice had been made. The future of humanity, and the galaxy, would depend on how they wielded the power they had uncovered. It was a burden, a responsibility that would shape the course of history. And in that moment, the commander understood. The weapon wasn't just a force of destruction, it was a test. A test of humanity's heart, of whether they were ready for the responsibility of the power they had discovered. Whether they would rise to protect the galaxy, or fall into chaos. The future was in their hands. And the only thing left was to see how they would choose to shape it.